All right. I've got 2:45 on my clock, so we might as well get started and see how we do on things. I apologize if everything goes completely off the rails. My laptop heard I'm getting a replacement, so it's being a little persnickety since then. It knows it's going to be replaced soon. But hi everyone. I'm here to talk about automating a hockey team with serverless technologies. And honestly, I can't believe I've tricked a conference and letting me talk about hockey for about an hour. That's pretty crazy, but I'm here for that. Before we really get started, I just want to thank Code PaLOUsa for having me here to speak. I really appreciate it. And I want to give a shout out to all the wonderful speakers that they have all lined up. As someone who runs a couple of meetups here in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, yeah, having sponsors is a big deal. So having Amazon Alexa, the Software Guild, Andromeda, and Modus sponsoring this event is huge. And I just want to say I really appreciate that as well. So yeah, this slide here, it's where you can get a hold of me. Pretty much I am at MacDonald, ST, almost anywhere on the internet, whether it's Twitter, GitHub, Instagram, whatever. It's a horrible username, but it was my first Unix username when I was in university, so it's always available everywhere. And the other thing is, you may notice this slide here. Well, I've been doing this for about 2 years now. And generally what I get is for people to take a picture of me every talk so that I can have this infinite Simons slide where it's basically Simons all the way down. So unfortunately, now we're doing everything virtual, and I wish I could be there with all of you, because I've never had a chance to visit the wonderful city. But right now the best I can do for this slide is kind of have the video window pop up there as well. So what are you gonna do? So I do give a lot of talks, but hopefully soon I can start doing some more of these in person. And as I said, I'm Canadian. You may have figured that out immediately just by the funny way that I talk. And like most Canadians, I do love hockey. So, I mean, this is, slides are a little slower. I will advance them quicker. Yeah, so I absolutely love hockey. I love to watch it. I love to play hockey. I love to talk about hockey. And honestly, if you ever wondered, how much do Canadians actually love hockey, seeing a sign like that when you go into a hotel is, pretty much confirmation. It's like, yeah, kids, when you're out here on your trips, please do not play hockey in the halls. And as Max asked earlier in the chat bubble, it's like, what level of hockey do I actually play at? So I played, I guess it would be junior A here in Canada. That's just before you would go off to university hockey or major junior kind of thing. Never even come close to making the NHL or anything like that. Just, really enjoyed the game. But over the last 10 years or so, I've been running a weekly hockey game here in Ottawa. And Max's question was, what does the level of play look like? Well, you can see in this slide that there are 2 dark sweaters all alone on the goaltender, and a bunch of white sweaters just kind of looking at them going like, yeah, okay, we should probably do something about that. So, that alone gives you an idea of what our actual skill level is. But really what was happening over, the 10 years or so is, to manage this hockey team and make it fun for everybody else, I had to, do a lot of work in the background. And so there were some things that, I do on a weekly basis. And first and foremost is I have to create a reminder email with the game time and the location. Sometimes the times may shift a little bit, or the location may shift a little bit. It's not always at a consistent rink here in Ottawa. And folks really need that reminder email message. It's not like I can send out the schedule at the beginning of the year and expect these guys to actually remember where they're going from week to week. I also, need to collect all those responses in. If we only have 12 guys able to show up, well, that's no good, because we need, somewhere around 18 to 20 in order to have a fun, entertaining game. So I want to make sure I know how many people are going to show up. And if we're short on people, I have to go off looking for some spares. So those are folks that don't play from week to week, but are still interested in playing hockey occasionally. And so once I've got all that together, what I like to do is to take a look at the 20 or so guys that I have and create a couple of even teams so that we can just go out and have fun and not worry about one team completely dominating the other one. So when you take a look at those 4 things that I do every week and you add them all together, it comes up to 70 minutes, which is, that's not a lot of time, but it's not a little time when you consider that I do that every week for over 10 years now. I'm like, wait a minute, aren't I a technologist? Why didn't I do this sooner? Anyway, so I had to decide, is this going to be worth my time in order to write some code to automate this? And so there's this wonderful graph that's up on XKCD. You can't really see the link there at the bottom, but when I post up the slides, you'll be able to get a link to exactly this comic by Randall Munroe. He's an engineer, he's a comedian, he's everything. And for us, like, we're taking a look at things, and it's like, since I do this weekly, we want to look at this column. And then when let's say I want to shave 30 minutes off of it, just get it down to like 40 minutes a day or 40 minutes a week. That gives me about 5 days of time to be able to spend on this side project, which, okay, that's a pretty good way of looking at the budget. If you're not familiar with Randall Munroe and XKCD, I suggest that you do check out the free webcomic. It's hilarious. And if you want to kind of get into a deep dive of some of his things, he has these wonderful books. The first one, What If? The first chapter is, what if you throw a baseball at the speed of light? And hilarity ensues from that point. And if you read that first chapter and you're not completely hooked on his humor, well, I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, I don't get paid to sell those books, but I just thought I would put that in there. So when it comes to saving time, we started off with 70 minutes, let's shave 30 minutes off it, we're down to 40 minutes a week. And when we take a look at that over the next 5 years, so if I save 30 minutes, 52 weeks a year, and we actually do play 52 weeks a year. The only time we actually take a day off is when we usually play Friday nights, is if that day falls on a holiday. But other than that, we're 52 weeks a year. It doesn't matter if it's January or July, we are playing hockey because we are committed, crazy Canucks. Anyway, yeah, so 52 weeks times 5 years divided by 130 hours, and we come down to our budget. So the true amount of time that we could work on this before we start wasting time just building the serverless thing is 5 days and 10 hours. Sorry about that. Sorry, it's just a frog in my throat. It's not a sickness. Don't worry about it. So how can we shave 30 minutes off of these tasks? Well, the first thing is what we can do is to take a look at that email that I have to send out every week. If I could shave 10 minutes off that by automating it so that I have something that just creates the email, puts all the folks on it that need to be reminded and tells them where it's going to be and what the time is, that alone will save me 10 minutes a week. If again, since we're already sending emails, let's figure out a way to automate the email that goes out to the spares to let them know that, hey, I need some extra people to play. That could save us another 10 minutes. And when it comes to the roster creation, if there's some way that I can already pre-populate a spreadsheet with like 2 teams, we can get into figuring out like who is the better players on those teams but at least if I can get that spreadsheet created, because guys don't even read the email on Friday. So I have to print out a spreadsheet, put it up on the door so people know what team they're actually on. So anything that helps me there can save me another 10 minutes. Well, now that we know what we want to do or what I wanted to accomplish, it's time to get to work. So that's the University of Louisville Cardinals ice hockey team. And folks, in the biz, that's what we call pandering to your audience. So hopefully those of you in Louisville have taken it a game. It looks like they are absolutely decimating whatever team they're playing, because that goaltender and defenseman are crushed right now. Anyway, moving on. So in true hockey parlance, we have to take a look at what the keys to the game are. Like, what is going to make this project a success? Well, first, we need to be able to send emails. If we can automate the sending of emails, that is going to be key to getting this done. If we can perform some CRUD operations on a JSON database, that will be a huge benefit as well. And the third key to the game is we need to be able to create that spreadsheet. So those are the real three things that I put into my project that said, like, if I get these done, then I can use this going forward. So let's get ready for puck drop. So it's me versus the technology. The game is tied, 0-0. So first thing we have to do is I wanted to take a look at the various different function as a service options to be able to do the sending of email and other fun database lookups. And so you look at the top ones. We got AWS has Lambda. We have Google Cloud Functions. We have Microsoft Azure Functions. IBM has Bluemix. And full disclosure, I work for Adobe, and Adobe has this thing called Adobe I/O Runtime. And so, okay, I work for Adobe. What I should do is I should really be a good corporate citizen. I should dog food our own product, and I picked that as the serverless technology that I was going to use. All right. That lasted for about a half an hour because when I was building this project last year, we don't actually support cron jobs. So, just being able to run a serverless function every X number of hours or at a certain point in time. So last summer, that package wasn't part of I/O runtime. So yeah, all right, I couldn't use that. However, I will tell you, and this is not a product pitch, they have added the cron job or the timings function to runtime, so it's available now. So if I was looking at things today, I might go and give that another try. But unfortunately, last year, it wasn't available, so I decided, what the heck, I will use AWS Lambda, something I haven't used that often, so let me give that a try. But unfortunately, dang it, first thing that happened is that technology, slipped a goal past me, and we have barely started the game, and already I am down 1-0 to technology. But I figured I still had time to rally. It's no big deal. I know it's disheartening when you get that initial part of the project where things are not going your way, but you got to keep pushing through. But the other thing that it taught me is that not all function as a service things are created equal. So when I was just picking what technology, I was just assuming that a lot of them would have exactly the features that I would want. But yeah, that wasn't actually the case, and that was too bad. So again, before choosing what technology you're going to use, do a little bit more research than I did. I know there's the saying in the industry is like, oh, no one ever got fired for picking Microsoft, or no one ever got fired for picking Google, but it may not be the best fit for you. And in case you're wondering, those two NHL players, the extremely tall one is Zdeno Chara. He's 6'9", if I'm not mistaken, and he is on his way to the Hall of Fame in the NHL. And the smaller gentleman is Rocco Gamaldry. So basically, he plays for the Nashville Predators. And so they're both hockey players, and they are both NHLers, but they are not created equal at all, which is really what I'm trying to say. But they are both incredibly valid as NHLers, and they just have different skill sets. All right. Let's get started. I decided that I would start my journey by working on some functionality to send emails. So I would end up using that multiple times per week. So I'd be sending out email reminders to the guys to say, hey, game's on this day. I would be sending out requests for spares so that people would be able to get that information. So great. Let's actually take a look at a little bit of code. So this is the start of a Lambda. that I wrote in order to be able to send emails. And because I wanted my emails just to come from my Gmail account, and I was used to using some of the Google APIs, I just was able to authenticate with things. So when you get into the handler itself, besides getting your client IDs and secrets and tokens and all that stuff, so it authenticates with you for, sorry, I should flip ahead. So yes, we're going to program in all of our secrets. They can be added to the Lambda so that they're not in the code, but they're in the configuration for the Lambda. It gets passed in when this Lambda is run. And then the next step is we're going to create our OAuth client, and we're going to authenticate with Google so that I actually can say that, yes, it really is me that wants to send that email message. And once I authenticate with the OAuth, I can exchange that for a new access token. So these 20 or so lines of code get me to an authenticated state with Google, which is great. Oops, I went the wrong way, and I need to go down. All right, so the next part of that in sending emails is I'm just going to set up this very simple process with the node mailer in order to authenticate with Gmail for sending messages. That's not too bad. You just supply your username, your client ID, and all your tokens, and you get authenticated. Great. And then finally, what we're going to be returning from this Lambda is a promise, which we'll send the mail. And so I have this template that I pull in, and it will set up all of the people that it's going to go to, the time, the date, everything else. And if it succeeds, great. If it doesn't, then I'm going to get an error back. So, sorry. So that's basically what we needed to do along the whole Lambda side of things. All right. Yeah, I kept forgetting to move the highlights over. My bad, folks. All right, so we get to the end. We're actually able to send some emails. I'm like, okay, great. Works perfectly well locally. I was doing all my testing locally because I wanted to save any of the costs of running these Lambdas in the cloud. And yeah, okay. So historically, I guess a lot of spam has been coming from AWS Lambdas and EC2 instances. It was a popular way of spammers being able to do things. So what actually happens is Gmail will prevent you from being able to make a connection from these instances to Gmail to send mail. So once again, I got hit with the not paying attention tax, and here we go. That's too bad. And once again, technology scores on me. So we're still in the first period here. We're not even that far into the first period, and I'm already down to nothing because I am not paying enough attention to this stuff. So we go back to all of our remaining function as a service options, and well, what else are we going to do? And I was a little bit tired of spinning my wheels at that point in time, and I'd already written the code in order to be able to send an email through the Gmail interface. I didn't want to have to learn any of the Amazon processes that they actually give you in order to send email, because again, we only had a time budget on this of less than 5 days, or sorry, just over 5 days. So I decided I would pick Microsoft Azure because I've had some experience with it. Now, we get on to sending emails part 2. And in that case, there's not a lot different. Really, it's this, the function's signature is slightly different. So from what a Lambda is, but not that big of a deal. We can change that code super easily. And again, what you see is that when we're sending the email, instead of we have the slightly different thing. Instead of returning something, we actually call this function that context is done. So we send the response when it succeeds, or we send the error when it fails. And I run this in the cloud, and wouldn't you know, things actually work out. And yeah, I don't know if you can tell on your screens, but that is a lacrosse style goal where he kind of picks it up on his stick and slips it in behind the goaltender. So at that point, I'm starting to feel better about myself. We're getting near the end of the first period here, but at least I have scored a goal on technology. So they're still up 2-1, but at least I'm doing something right. Moving forward, I decided that I needed to have a cloud database. So there's not actually that much data that I have for this thing. There's a list of players, there's a list of dates and times for our games. So it was only approximately 3 kilobytes of data, and then some other extraneous data for the spares as well. So I decided that I would just take a look for a Cloud DB. And you basically need a Cloud DB, because if not, your FAS is not going to persist data between invocations of all of its functions, because that's just not how serverless works. So enter Microsoft's solution. They have CosmosDB. And I thought, okay, that should be interesting. What does it do? Well, it's globally distributed NoSQL database, and that sounds great. That's kind of exactly what I needed. So I was like, all right, I'll give that a spin. Let's see how that works. Now, like I said, there's not a lot going on in the data. You can see this is kind of what the sample data looks like. This is just the games that we have. So one in particular, it's like, we're playing at the SensFlex, at 9:30 at night. So it's like, all right, cool. So I need to get that data into my Lambda. And CosmosDB provides this really awesome thing. It's called database bindings. So when you're creating your functions there in Azure, there's a file called function.js, which is where you can provide a lot of these bindings. So not only like how the function is called, how the function can like return data, but you can also specify how data gets into the function as well. And in our case, what we wanted to do in these highlighted lines here is I wanted to get the games document, which is what I had set up with all our hockey games for the season. And it was coming in from CosmosDB. You can see that the database name is games, and all of the different parts of this object are in the items array. And it just goes into the data, or so it goes into the function when the function is called. And I was like, oh, this is great. I don't have to write a lot of code to connect to the database and query the data. I just tell it like, oh, just give me this collection when you run. So I have it available to me. I was like, all right, that's pretty sweet. I like what you got going on there. So when it comes to the email template code, which is what I'm using when I have to send out that weekly email, I'm reading from a bunch of different databases in my CosmosDB instance. You can see here, I've got them highlighted. So I had the players, the games, and the spares split up into 3 separate database containers inside of CosmosDB. Made sense to me. And then what I'm doing is I'm just creating a JSON object which represents the email message that I'm going to send. So it's it's coming from me, and I generate all of the people that it should go to. And then if I have any spares, I generate the spares in the CC list, and then generate the subject line, filling in the date and time and everything else. And I just like throw in a body, which usually has some pithy comments for my my hockey players or my friends that I play with, perhaps giving them a hard time about how they played the previous week. But again, once all that is done, I'm just going to return that from the Lambda using context.done. So the Lambda is done, or sorry, yeah, the function is done when all this data is into its JSON object and it just gets returned. So how did that work out? Well, if you ask, Thomas Schertle, worked out pretty good. I feel like I scored one there because I saved myself a lot of time by using CosmosDB and its functionality. So feeling really good about myself. I was, patting myself on the back right about then because, we're about halfway through the game right now, and I feel like I'm tied, and I'm starting to catch up on the shot clock as well. So yeah, things are going good. Pretty happy. But now I have the function template and I have the function for email. How do I connect the two of them together? So what's going on there? And in Azure, they have this kind kind of concept of chaining functions using their orchestration. So it's the way that a function can call a function can call a function. And they have a number of different patterns. The one that we're interested in is the chaining pattern. So you want to have things go from like function 1 through to function n, and have the output of the previous function be the input of the current function. So great, that sounded like exactly what we needed. So how do we write one of those? And it turned out not to be terribly difficult. You can see it's 8 lines of code. So the first thing that we do is we create this generator function. So the orchestrator is, we're pulling this in from the durable functions. It's a library that Microsoft provides for you. And so we create that orchestrator. And so it's one of the few times I've actually used a generator in JavaScript, but in this case, it works super well. So that orchestrator, the first thing it will do is it will call our activity. So it will call the template function, and then it will yield the execution. So basically what happens is the template function goes off, it gets called, and while that's happening, this the current orchestration function here just pauses execution. And once the call is complete, our orchestration function gets called again. And so this time, since we will be picking back up after the yield, we'll know to call another activity, which is the email. So we're basically getting the output of the previous function in our template value, and we're passing it to the email function that we're calling. And so now we've been able to split up our template function from our email function, which is pretty useful, because when it gets down to it, we'll be needing to send a bunch of different emails, but they'll have a bunch of different templates. And once again, feeling happy. I mean, if I could ever score a goal like that, I'd be feeling very happy, but what are you going to do? All right, so we're getting pretty near the end of the second period, and I'm up 3-2, feeling good. I'm pretty happy. The coach is not yelling at me anymore. We got more shots than technology, so yeah, things are going good. The next step is we need to take a look at how to call these things on a weekly basis. So we're going to set up a cron job. So I don't want to have to call these functions myself. I need them called, every Wednesday morning. I want to send out the reminder email message. Every Thursday morning, I need to send out a message to spares like, hey, I might need 2 or 3 of you folks. And on Friday, I want that that spreadsheet set up correctly for me. So great. Using these kind of cron jobs, we don't actually have to worry about calling the HTTP endpoint. Now, again, you make some edits to your function .json, and you basically specify when you want it called. And so we have the highlight here. It's using for the schedule what is called the ncron tab expression, which is, again, it's another fun Unix thing. And I can never remember what what the values for all those things are, but I wrote them down because you only have to look them up like 5 times before you realize, yeah, I should probably write this down. And it goes minutes, hours, seconds, day of month, day of week. So what I'm doing here is at 6 a.m. every Friday, I want this function called. And this is the one that actually creates the spreadsheet for me. All right. So getting into the creation of the spreadsheet, you see some things that are pretty much the same as we have used before. We have the Google APIs and the authentication, because we're going to need to authenticate with Google in order to create this Google sheet that I have. Now, this new piece right here is that database section. So that is just some utilities that I created in order to make reading and writing from the database easier. It's nothing fancy. In fact, you don't want to see all that CRUD code. The rest of this is exactly the same as the email function. It's just authenticating with Google so that we can get that token. What's new is the creation of the spreadsheet side of things. And so this first bit up here, you can see a lot of it is just interacting with the data. So we'll get our players, we'll get our games, and we'll get our spares from the CosmosDB database by using the binding that we had set up earlier, which is great. And then we do some filtering so that we make sure that we have the correct players showing up, not only regulars, but spares as well. Awesome. Now, on the Google Sheets side of things, like we first start by authenticating with Sheets, and then we say, hey, let's create a brand new spreadsheet because I keep a new one for every week. Then we append the data that we want to the spreadsheet. And finally, I do a little bit of formatting because I want things to look nicer when I actually, I print it, I put it up on the wall there, and we're getting old. Some guys, they don't want to squint to be able to read things, so I bump up the font quite a bit. Not me though, I don't have glasses yet. Sorry, that's about the only thing I can brag about because the hair has been gone for a while. So yeah, once we format this result, then we can return this function, and at the same time, over in my Google Drive, there's a spreadsheet that's created for me. So I'm like, yeah, sweet, this is awesome. And probably not as good as the greatest player in hockey right now, Connor McDavid, but I feel like I scored a goal. So sweet, doing pretty good. Again, I feel like this is really going somewhere. I'm getting a lot of value out of this. Now, you take a look at things, it's like, yeah, we're late in the third. There's less than 5 minutes left. I'm up by 2 goals. I'm telling all the guys, like, all right, this is cool, guys. Just get the pucks in deep. Only one guy in. Just make sure that everybody's back defensively. And I feel like, yeah, let's go under a defensive shell and let's run out the clock on this game, and we'll be pretty happy. I feel like, yeah, things are going really good. Oh, yeah, then the bill came. So, hey, did anybody ever hear that, serverless is supposed to save you money? Well, don't have a heart attack over these next couple of slides, but because just remember, this is Canadian money, so it's not that expensive. So once things really got rolling, yeah, July cost me almost $145, which was insane. August, whoops, how did I do that? Let's see, sorry, July, $144. August, $166, which was great. And then September, $173. So cool. And you're probably wondering, like, why didn't you shut that off sooner? Basically, the way that the billing worked is I didn't get the bill for July until near the end of August. So I already had the 2 months before I was even really dealing with this stuff. But sadly, I snatched defeat right from the jaws of victory there. So I would count those 3 months as some definite goals against me by technology. So wow, that really sucked. Terrible, I tell you. Now, what did I learn? You can reduce the costs of your CosmosDB instance. So you are not paying for use. You are actually paying for reserved capacity. So that is something that you have to get your head around. Again, I'm not paying attention tax here because it was only a side project. I just assumed that I was only going to get billed the amount of data that I was actually using. And remember, it was only really 3 kilobytes. So there wasn't that much data going on. So at a minimum, you have 400 RUs, or what are called reserved units, in CosmosDB. That is the minimum that you can set your container at. And even if you spin up one of these containers and you do nothing, you don't put any data in it, there's no traffic whatsoever, that will cost you $23.61 per month. That's it. That's the minimum cost it will ever be. Also, what you want to do is combine your containers. As you had seen in the code that I showed earlier, I had a container for the players, I had a container for the games, and I had a container for the spares. That was a really bad idea because each one of those containers was a multiplier. So again, $23.61 per month times 3 just to do nothing. So that wasn't really great. However, there's a couple other things that you can turn off that makes things cheaper as well. disable the geo redundancy. It's like, okay, CosmosDB was definitely overkill for what I wanted to do, but I was interested in learning some new technology. I already had disabled the geo redundancy because I didn't see me needing this data to be replicated to Australia. As well, you disable the multi-region rights. There was, again, no reason for me to be writing this data into a European data center. So there are ways that you can really make CosmosDB quite a bit cheaper for yourself if you're using it on a side project. Well, what did I learn during this entire thing? Well, first and foremost, I learned that not all function as a service providers support the same functionality. It's not all completely the same. Don't just immediately jump into the pool with both feet, because you may be picking the wrong thing. Do a little bit more research than I did. Serverless programming can definitely accelerate your time to market. The amount of time that I spent on this kind of side project in order to manage my hockey team was pretty minimal, like a couple of hours every week or so, but I actually did get something that was working quite well for me, and it was saving me quite a bit of time. So I was very impressed by that. But also I would suggest that you test in production as soon as possible. That is something that I wish I had done before I got too far down the line with doing things with Amazon, because I would have caught that error where it didn't allow me to connect to Gmail or to be able to send messages. And I mean, honestly, you want your development environment to be as close to production as possible, because that's how you're going to, figure out that things are going to go wrong a lot sooner. And keep a close eye on your costs. There are tools that allow you to have a better idea of where you're spending your money. For me, you saw it was kind of during the summer. I wasn't paying as close attention as I should have been. I was just kind of taking it easy. And also, obviously, those values are from 2019 when I was running this. Haven't played hockey since March. Everything's kind of shut down here. I hope all of you are doing well and staying safe where you're at. And then experimentation. It's fun, and I would do this all over again. Even though I spent a little bit more money than I was expecting, I had a lot of fun just having something to get me looking at all these different technologies. It gave me a reason to look at what the differences between Adobe's implementation, Amazon's implementation, Microsoft's implementation, and see how things could be better. So the thing is, all of those problems that I ran into with CosmosDB, could they have been fixed with something like, I don't know, a free tier for CosmosDB? Well, in 2019, that didn't exist, but it does now, and you're welcome. Actually, in the DevRel community, I do know quite a few people from Microsoft. I was able to talk to them, and earlier this year, they released a free tier for CosmosDB. So if you want to play around with it and get an idea of what its functionality is, you can totally do that now. It's not going to cost you $100 a month like it was doing for me. So again, you're welcome. So that is it for me. If you want to continue the conversation, you can always reach out to me on Twitter. The slides are up there, and the code is also available for anybody who wants to see it. No judgment. It was kind of a hack. And yes, that is a picture of me, 4 years old, first hockey game I ever played. My parents were very proud, and I was, I hated that red hair back then, but boy, I would love to have it now. So yeah, that's all I've got for this. Hopefully you enjoyed my journey. And if there's any questions, you can drop them in the chat and I can answer them. I can stick around for as long as you need. And if not, like I said, just please reach out to me on Twitter. I'd be happy to continue talking about this. Thanks.